The Texas sun beat down on the dusty windshield. Jake gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Beside him, Marissa nervously scanned a crumpled map. They were lost, hopelessly so, in the vast emptiness of West Texas. Just when their hope began to dwindle, a weathered sign emerged from the dust clouds. Black Hollow Ranch, it proclaimed in faded paint. The ranch was a desolate tableau of decay. The wooden bones of the main house sagged under the weight of time. The outbuildings, little more than skeletons, stood like forgotten sentinels. An unsettling stillness hung in the air, broken only by the mournful sigh of the wind. Jake and Marissa stepped out of the car, their footsteps echoing in the silence. A shiver ran down Marissa's spine. This place held the weight of forgotten stories. Jake, ever the optimist, saw potential in the crumbling structure. He envisioned restoration, a return to a bygone era. Marissa, however, felt a growing unease. The silence was too profound, the stillness too absolute. It was as if the very air held its breath, watching, waiting. As they approached the house, a flock of crows erupted from the roof, their harsh cries a jarring contrast to the oppressive silence. Marissa fought the urge to turn back. What had they stumbled upon? The first night descended upon Black Hollow Ranch like a shroud, enveloping everything in an eerie stillness. The wind howled through the gaps in the boarded windows, its mournful cry a haunting melody that seemed to echo through the empty halls. Jake, exhausted from the long drive and initial cleanup, slept soundly, oblivious to the unsettling atmosphere around him. But Marissa lay awake, her senses on high alert, every sound amplified in the oppressive darkness. The darkness felt thick, almost suffocating, as if it were a living entity pressing down on her. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind against the window pane sent a jolt of fear through her. Then she heard it, a sound that made her blood run cold, a child's cry, faint but distinct, echoing from the depths of the house, cutting through the silence like a knife. It was a mournful sound, filled with a deep, visceral sadness that tugged at her heartstrings. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat a thunderous drum in the quiet room. Fear threatened to consume her, but she knew she had to investigate. She couldn't ignore the cry for help. With trembling hands, she shook Jake awake, her voice a frantic whisper in the dark. His sleep-fogged mind struggled to comprehend her panicked whispers, but the urgency in her voice was unmistakable. The cry came again, closer this time, seeming to emanate from the old guest house just beyond the overgrown courtyard, sending chills down their spines. Jake grabbed his flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness as they cautiously stepped out into the night, the air thick with tension. The courtyard was cloaked in an eerie silence, the moonlight casting long, sinister shadows. The air was thick with the scent of decay and damp earth, a reminder of the ranch's long abandonment. As they neared the guest house, the crying ceased abruptly, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. Jake rattled the doorknob, but it was locked tight, refusing to budge despite his efforts. Peering through a crack in the wood, he saw only cobwebs and dust motes dancing in the moonlight, the room seemingly untouched for years. Marissa felt a cold dread creep up her spine, the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. Whatever had made that sound was gone, but its presence lingered, a palpable weight in the stillness, leaving them with more questions than answers. The next morning Jake dismissed Marissa's concerns, brushing them off as mere figments of her imagination. He attributed the cry she heard to her imagination, fueled by the strangeness and unfamiliarity of their new surroundings. Marissa, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply amiss, a sense of unease gnawing at her. Determined to uncover the truth behind the haunting cry, she ventured into the main house's dusty attic, a place she had avoided until now. Cobwebs clung to her face as she pushed open the creaking door, the sound echoing in the stillness. The air was thick with dust and the musty odour of forgotten things, a testament to years of neglect. Sunbeams filtering through cracks in the roof illuminated a forgotten world, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Among the dusty trunks and discarded furniture, Marissa discovered a small wooden chest tucked away in a corner, almost hidden from view. Inside, nestled among yellowed lace and faded photographs, lay a leather-bound diary, its cover worn and fragile. Its pages, brittle with age, chronicled the life of Sarah, a young woman who had lived and died at Black Hollow Ranch in the late 1800s, her story unfolding with each turn of the page. As Marissa delved deeper into Sarah's words, a chilling realization washed over her, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Sarah had lost a child, a young boy who had tragically drowned in the well behind the guest house, his cries echoing through time. That night, as the wind howled and the house groaned around them, Jake and Marissa swore they saw flickering figures moving at the edge of their vision, ghostly apparitions that seemed almost real. Shadows seemed to dance in the flickering candlelight, taking on the shapes of a woman and a small boy, their forms shifting and changing. The temperature plummeted, a bone-chilling cold that seemed to seep from the very walls of the house, wrapping around them like a shroud. A sense of dread settled over them, heavy and suffocating, as if the house itself was alive and watching. They were not alone at Black Hollow Ranch, the shadows of the past lingering, ever-present and unyielding. The haunting escalated with terrifying swiftness, as if the spirits had been waiting for the perfect moment to unleash their full fury. The ghostly figures, once fleeting shadows, grew bolder, their forms solidifying, their presence undeniable. They moved with a purpose, as if driven by some unseen force. The sound of footsteps echoed through the empty halls at night, slow, deliberate steps that sent chills down their spines. Each step seemed to carry a weight of sorrow and anger. One evening, as Jake sat in the living room, attempting to ignore the growing sense of unease, a heavy cast-iron pot flew across the room, crashing against the wall just inches from his head. The force was so strong it left a dent in the wall. The force of the impact shook the old house to its core, causing the windows to rattle and the furniture to tremble. Doors slammed shut with violent force, their sound echoing through the empty rooms like gunshots. It was as if the house itself was alive, reacting to the unseen turmoil within. Objects vanished from their places, only to reappear in impossible locations. A book that was on the shelf would suddenly be found in the kitchen, or a chair would move from one room to another without a sound. Fear, primal and consuming, tightened its grip on Jake and Marissa. They could feel the malevolent energy growing stronger with each passing day. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by a constant state of hypervigilance. Every creak, every whisper of wind set their nerves on edge. They were prisoners in a haunted house, tormented by unseen forces that seemed to take pleasure in their suffering. One night, Jake, driven to the brink by terror and desperation, decided to confront the entities. He could no longer stand the constant fear and uncertainty. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and a surge of desperate courage, he stalked through the darkened house, calling out to the unseen presences. His voice was steady, but his heart pounded in his chest. His voice echoed in the stillness, unanswered. The silence was deafening, amplifying his fear. Then, just as he was about to give up, he saw her. A figure materialized at the end of the hallway, almost as if she had been waiting for him. The ghostly figure of a woman, her long white gown billowing around her, stood at the end of the hallway. She seemed to glow with an ethereal light. Her face, pale and gaunt, was etched with an expression of profound sadness. Her eyes, hollow and dark, seemed to plead for help. In her arms, she cradled a small, translucent figure, the child. The sight was both heartbreaking and terrifying, a mother and child trapped in an eternal sorrow. The sight of the woman and child, so clearly defined, so undeniably real, broke something within Jake. Terror, raw and consuming, surged through him, erasing all rational thought. He stumbled back, tripping over his own feet in his haste to escape. He fled back to Marissa, his face ashen, his eyes wide with terror. There was no need for words. Marissa saw the sheer terror etched on his face and knew they had to leave. Now they didn't pack, didn't stop to collect their belongings. They ran through the darkness, their every thought focused on putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the haunted ranch. As they sped away, the headlights of their car illuminated the dilapidated sign at the end of the drive. Black Hollow Ranch, it read, the words mocking them, daring them to return. Jake and Marissa never looked back. They tried to forget their time at Black Hollow Ranch, tried to bury the memory of the terror that had gripped them. But some wounds run too deep. They say Black Hollow Ranch still stands, a desolate monument to its tragic past. Some say if you listen closely on a quiet night, you can still hear the mournful cry of a child echoing through the empty rooms, a chilling reminder that some places are never truly at peace. If you like this video, like it and subscribe to my channel.